I'm excited to be back in the black hole of real estate with you. And to be honest with you, at a time when people are concerned about lawsuits and commissions and interest rates, what I'm noticing are people are still buying and selling properties. And anytime you get towards an end of a year or start of a year, what you'll notice is that the people that are out there in the market looking at homes or putting signs up in their front yards, they are serious. And they have reasons to move that are bigger than concerns about all those other things. They're just ready to move. It's a time in their life where they're ready. And it could be for any number of reasons. And you're familiar with them. It's time to upsize or downside. You're an empty nester. You're getting married. You're blending a family. Maybe there's a life circumstance or a health concern for a family member. Or maybe the job transfer came through and you're moving out of state, or you're just buying that beach house, down in a warm weather state from up north. And these are the reasons that people move at a time when others may not necessarily think it's the right time to move. And when you really think about it, the reason we move is the home was likely the best option available at the time that you moved into it, and now it no longer is that best option available. It's super simple, and it doesn't take much to really see through those reasons. So we see motivated people buying and motivated people selling at this time of the year, and it's not all that surprising. Now, recently we've seen the interest rates top out, and I'll throw a number out there in the 8% range, and then very quickly it dropped almost a full percent. And I don't know that that's a new thing or a thing that's not going to stop. We felt that sometime in November, as a year out from elections, we would see some softening of interest rates. I'm not convinced that anybody thought rates would be in the high 7s and 8s, but they did retrace mid-month, and that's likely, in my opinion, to continue. Now, will we ride it all the way down for 5% sometime around next year's election? Maybe. There's a lot that could happen between now and then that would cause that to happen or not happen. And yes, inflation, and yes, wars on foreign lands and political concerns might weigh into it, but the fact that people are still wanting to move, that's what's driving things. The inventory levels that we've seen over the past few years have never really recovered, so it's keeping demand super high for those that are available. And most of the properties that go on the market that are priced in the market, so to speak, and not way overpriced, they're still getting multiple offers and they're still selling quickly. Nothing has changed there. And until we come to a day where the available inventory catches up to that demand, it's just going to be that way. And we're thousands of homes in small markets away from that. Inventory could double right now, and I don't know if that would satisfy the appetite of buyers right now. So we've got a ways to go still after all these years to get the inventory level back. So when that demand is there compared to the inventory, the interest rate matters less. But let's also keep in mind that a lot of the buyers, in my organization, more than half the buyers this year were cash. They're not worried about interest rates because they've got cash. What we will see, and I believe this will ring true between now and the end of the year, is that money will likely flow out of the stock market and into something else. It's a good time for people to take profits and cash in, maybe get those profits in before the end of the year. If there's a certain capital gains reason on that might happen. I don't hear a lot of people waiting until after they're first to sell a position, like on January 2nd, to push it out for another year, unless there's some really big gain that they want to try to time the market. But I'm not in the stock market, so I can't really advise on that. I won't. But my suspicion is a lot of people are moving money right now into homes on this year, whether it's to get in and get and like in Florida, there's a homestead if you close before the end of the year. That might be a big thing for you. So there's some absolutely good reasons for taxes and strategies to get real estate purchases done by the end of the year. For some people, there's capital gains getting it done by the end of the year. I think that's the mix. I don't see too many people pausing, like, I just got to get through to the next tax year and then sell or buy. I think the urgency would be to do it before December 31st. So I expect some movement in the inventory level between now and then. 1031 exchanges are somewhat increasing in popularity right now with uncertain tax rates to reinvest the money tax free. So if you're in that space, that's on the radar as well. And what that really means is if you're selling a property and you don't want to pay the tax right now, you can do a like kind exchange, they call it 1031 exchange, and you don't pay the tax at closing. You hire a company to actually handle the money from closing, and so it never touches your hands or your bank account. It stays right in the intermediary's account. And then when the next purchase comes up, then they send the money for it. So, the rough guidelines are that if you sell a home, 1031 exchange, let's say it's an investment property, then you have to buy a like kind, another investment property. That's how that would work. You'd have 45 days from closing to identify your next purchase, and then 180 days in order to actually close that sale. And then it's tax free. And the 1031 exchange company, the intermediary, they would explain how that works and how it's handled, but the money actually goes to them as opposed to you at closing, and then they send the money to the new closing. In all honesty, it works similar to a 401k. The same way that you would get a paycheck and the money would go to your 401k company and they would hang on to it and hang on to it and hang on to it, make investments for you and pay for those things. Then eventually when you took it out of the 401k at retirement, let's say, then you pay your taxes. 1031 exchange works very similar to that. So that continues to be popular among investors. And, so we'll really see, how that plays out. It's not a huge piece of the market, but it does happen. And it's always good to have it on the radar, especially as you're getting towards the end of the year. The one thing I see a lot of right now is homes that aren't selling that maybe somebody bought, a year or two ago that can't get a profit or at least enough money to pay off the mortgage, make a profit, pay off the real estate fees, pay off the closing fees, things like that. There is a growing number of people that say, you know what, I don't really want to sell this year. I think the market will be back next year when interest rates are lower. I think that would be a good thing. And we'd see people taking their properties off the market and renting them and taking that rental profit for the next year and like, hey, let's say the rent is $2,000 a month. It's $24,000 you got to work with. And that gets really interesting right now that I do believe that, I'm seeing it in our property management space. We're adding properties and doors very, very quickly right now. And if you think about it, if you can't get the price that you want in this market and you're not forced to sell at a price that you don't like, wouldn't it make sense to get an immediate return of income, even a couple $1,000s a month and $24,000 or $30,000 over the next year? Take that profit, put it in the bank account, do something with it, pay down the mortgage, and then next year sell into a better market when rates are better, and the fortunes of a seller might be better next year than this year, especially in some of the luxury price points. And we are seeing really solid returns on the rental market. So if you've got a property and you need to move and you're worried about selling it, well, what about renting it? Because there's freedom within that. Now, you move on. If you can rent it yourself, that's great, or hire a property management company to handle that for you. But now you get to go wherever you want to go. The house is taken care of. The money's coming in for it. You make a profit this year, and on top of what you sell for this year, just imagine making that extra money in rent this year and selling next year for a higher price. That's a really big swing. And for some people, it can be as much as $50,000 or $100,000. So it makes sense if you're thinking of moving, thinking of selling, you can't get the price that you want. The immediate income of renting is a great option for so many people right now. And if you have questions about that, that's definitely something to message us about, because we have a good specialization in an area to help you with that. So renting, as opposed to selling, it's a real big thing right now, and it's growing. And I don't think that's going to slow down. I think you'll see more people over the next 6 months doing that, getting to a better market, but also being able to move to where they would like to live right now and not be burdened with the property that is either not selling for the price they want or is not selling at all and not getting offers. So it's something to think about. The last thing I want to talk about is that we see, and it's unavoidable, the headlines of inflation and interest rates, but we also see, what's going on with these splinters of lawsuits and changes and the way commission is handled between a listing agent, brokerage and a buyer's agent brokerage. The way that's been shared over many, many, many years appears to be changing. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but in the next few years, there is a dynamic where things are changing a little bit. And I'll be watching with great interest, because I do believe that most people would like some help on the real estate side when they're buying a property, and being properly advised and properly informed, and what to look out for, and how to handle inspections, and just the contracts and paperwork itself. And if this dynamic shifts a little bit, where typically the seller's paid for it, it will create a different burden for a home buyer to actually have the money available should they need to hire an agent and pay that commission on their own, if that's how this works out. So I'm just going to watch it. I don't know that it's going to change. I think most buyers and sellers prefer the arrangement of the seller paying for that, because it provides a lot more opportunity for each side to pay at the closing as opposed up front. But we'll see. Change is always change. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It just has to be change. But the dynamic, well, is out there, and it's definitely got some people's attention. For me, I'm just going to continue to move on and do the things that we can do to help people in the real estate space, whether it's through property management or real estate sales or this podcast. Hope you guys have an awesome week. This is Ron Wojciechowski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.